I'm initially wondering where your family is originally from.
So it's kind of broken up between my two parents, but on my dad's side, that family is from Gesaria in modern-day Turkey, Caesarea, I think it's called. And then my mom's side is Harpert, specifically in Harpert, Verin Hoch is the little, I don't know if it's like a suburb or something, but part of the Harpert area.
In Armenia?
In old Armenia, yeah.
In old
Turkey.
Armenia, great. And can you share your parents' names?
My parents' names, my dad's name is Michael, and my mom's name is Darlene.
Wow. And when were they living in Armenia and Turkey?
They never. They were both born in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
This
It's
is your
ancestral.
grandparents. Okay, great.
It's like, not even my grandparents. It was so since they were all scattered during the genocide, and the Hamidian massacres. So my mom's side is a little more complicated because her mom's side, my mom's side, came to Fresno in the 1890s, in the midst of the Hamidian massacres. And then my mom's dad's side, my mom's dad came from Beirut, because that's where his family fled to from the genocide, from Aintab, in southern Turkey. He came in the 50s, I think.
Great.
And then my dad's side, his mom came from Beirut and his dad came from France, but they're both Armenians.
Wow.
From those areas.
So how long has your family been in your home country now?
So I guess for my dad's side, like 70 years, and my mom's side, more than 100.
So before coming to the United States, do you know what your family did in these various areas?
Unfortunately, I'm not too sure. I know in Beirut, so this isn't in Armenia. My mom's dad, his dad had a printing shop, I think. And I'm not too sure of my dad's parents. I think his mom was a seamstress, I think. I could be wrong.
And you said that they fled to Beirut.
Yeah, so, they're from Gesaria or whatever, and then during the genocide they fled to Beirut.
Do you know at what point in the genocide they fled?
I'm not entirely sure.
That's all right. And on your mom's side, do you have any idea what their lives were like before they came?
Unfortunately, I do not.
It's okay. Do you have any stories that you've heard from your family about their experiences with the genocide or with immigration?
I think this is my great grandfather. So, which makes that my grandma's great grandfather. He escaped the genocide from Harpert, and he had to run from the Ottoman soldiers, and he jumped into the Euphrates, I think, and they threw rocks at him, and I think whoever was with him ended up drowning. But he was like one of the few people that was able to swim, and he was able to survive and keep going.
And so at that point, both sides of your family immigrated directly to Fresno, or did they go somewhere before then?
Well, so that was my mom's side, and I think he came straight to Fresno after that. Whatever he could do to get to America or somewhere safer. And then my dad's side, they just fled to their respective countries of France and Lebanon.
Do you know what their lives were like in France or Lebanon at all?
I know my grandpa was there when the Germans came, and he had to work. He had to work for them, and he was liberated by the Allied sides.
So, in early life in America, have you heard any stories about what assimilation was like, or what their difficulties were with immigrating?
I mean, maybe not specifically for them, but I just know the deed to my grandparents' house doesn't like officially allow Armenians to own the property.
Oh.
My mom's parents. In Racine, Wisconsin, which is where my dad's parents ended up coming to in the 50s. I think there was already a significant Armenian population there, and so they were fairly, well received.
Did your mom's parents ever tell you why they chose Fresno?
I mean, Fresno had already a lot of Armenians coming, in the 1880s and 1890s, and then of course the genocide. Wherever there were Armenian populations, other Armenians just came. So.
Yeah. That's Do you know what kind of occupation your family was initially involved with here?
Here, on my mom's side, on my maternal grandmother's side, they owned a bulgur factory. I don't know if you know what bulgur
what
is,
is
but
that?
it's cracked wheat.
Okay.
And its roots trace pretty ancient times. I think they found it in like old Urartian urns and like Mesopotamian, like in Mesopotamian like cellars and stuff. But it's cracked wheat, and there's a specific process that completely dries out the wheat, and then you cook it like you would cracked wheat, like you would cook rice or something.
Were there a lot of Armenians that were involved in agriculture?
Yeah, especially in Fresno, because Fresno is just such a big place for agriculture.
And from what you know about your parents and grandparents, could you get a sense of what being Armenian meant to them and what their memory of their home country was like?
To a certain extent, like what Armenianness was to them, it was often kind of like, I guess, muted, because the sentiment to assimilate into American society was so significant that like my mom didn't grow up speaking Armenian. Her mom didn't grow up speaking Armenian. Did not. My dad grew up speaking Armenian, but I guess pressures to assimilate, he stopped speaking it really regularly, and he never spoke it with my family.
Wow. And do you speak Armenian now?
I'm learning. Yeah.
That's great. So I want to talk a little bit about your early years in Fresno and background. So you were born in Fresno, California. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 older sisters.
And what are their names?
Lauren and Marina.
Awesome. And what was it like growing up for you here? Can you tell us about any childhood memories or activities?
I guess a significant part of my childhood and just growing up in Fresno is the church community that I was involved with. St. Paul Armenian Church. Since there's such a big Armenian community in Fresno, there's 2 Armenian churches, 2 Armenian Orthodox churches. There's more other types of churches, but going to church events and just going to church every Sunday is something that I think definitely shaped me as a person and how I view my identity of being an Armenian. Let's see what else. But other than that, I suppose I grew up pretty assimilated, pretty removed from Armenianness, I guess.
Okay. Could you describe more about what the community of the Church of St. Paul means?
That's a good question. Because there's a lot of different types of Armenians that go there. A lot of Armenians that are from Armenia, and a lot of Armenians that had immigrated here earlier from Western Armenia. And so it's an interesting thing to observe these different types of Armenians coming together, obviously with the same goal, and interacting, or just like seeing how the differences in how they act, differences in how they, I guess, express their identity. Often it's the Western Armenians, mainly because they came much earlier, tend to speak English much better and much more often, whereas a lot of the Eastern Armenians that came much more recently in the 90s, 80s, and even past 2 decades tend to be a little less fluent in English, tend to kind of expect you to speak Armenian, which, I wish I could, but...
Yeah. Was there a relevant youth group or a lot of church events growing up?
Yeah, there was ACYO, Armenian Church Youth Organization, which I was a part of, and my sisters were a part of. And so through them, while I was too young to do anything, I participated anyway because it was with them. And of course, the youth at St. Paul, we weren't all around the same age because, there were different age groups, but we all interacted with each other to a certain extent and all kind of knew each other. And for events, church events, the picnics and stuff, like I pretty fondly remember going to picnics and listening to the Armenian music, and my dad pointing out Richard Hagopian, who's an Armenian oud player. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and learning Armenian dance and stuff.
Super cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you talk about experiencing cultures in these different ways through music and dance. Did you kind of have a favorite avenue which you were able to experience your Armenian identity?
Yeah, I'd say the music part, because I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for like 8 years.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
I, in 2020 actually, I started playing Armenian music with my friend who's Richard Hagopian's grandson. And so I've been playing that type of folk music since the end of 2020. And it's just a lot of fun, and it's there's a significant meaning to it for me, not only because of its sentimentality, but because it's much deeper than like the sentimental aspect. It's like, this is what my ancestors were listening to, were playing and dancing to, before they were, cleansed from where they lived.
Have you been able to share your music with anyone?
Yeah, I mean, we perform it.
Great.
So we play it. I mean, I sometimes sit in at the picnics or something, or I play it. We recently played at the Armenian Festival at St. Paul. Yeah, it's fun. That's another great experience. It's like you see other Armenians dancing to this music that I guess you could say it wasn't extinguished by Turkey, and they're keeping the dancing traditions alive, while we're keeping somewhat the music traditions alive.
Are there any other events like the festival you mentioned that you or your family attend?
Yeah, in August there's the grape blessing.
Oh yeah.
The blessing of the grapes, where there is music, and it's a religious. So I can't remember the exact significance of why the grapes are blessed. I think it's something to do with the Virgin Mary, but yeah, the grapes are blessed, and there's a service.
Where does that
outside.
happen?
At the Armenian home.
Oh, nice. It must have some connection to the agriculture aspect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the symbolism of grapes.
I
think.
Cool. I also was curious who are your closest relatives and what they do for work.
My closest relatives, like my family? Well, my mom is a teacher, special ed teacher. My sister is a teacher, and my oldest sister is a pharmacist.
Great. And do you have any more aunts or uncles that you were close to growing up?
Yeah, I mean, so it used to be every week when I was growing up, every week we would get together at my grandma's house. So my mom has 3 sisters, and all except one lives in Fresno, but even the one comes to Fresno pretty frequently. And so we would get together at my grandma's house pretty frequently, and so as a result of that, I would say I have a fairly close-ish relationship with my aunts and uncles. And so one of my uncles is a farmer. One of my uncles was a dentist. He's retired now. And then one of my uncles, I think he was a software engineer. And then my aunts, one's a speech pathologist, one is a teacher, a third grade teacher, or maybe younger teacher. I think younger, TK. And then one is, oh man, I don't really know what she is.
Okay. And continuing on about your home life, I was curious what holidays you celebrated with your family, or if you have any unique stories there.
Generally it's pretty, pretty standard American type of holidays that we celebrate, like Thanksgiving and Christmas on the 25th. But of course we do place like a certain significance on Christmas on January 6th, like Orthodox Christmas, the official day that Jesus is said to have been born. But for holidays, yeah, I guess it's pretty much just standard American type of holidays.
Did you have any favorite Armenian foods growing up?
I like meat a lot. So my mom makes yalanchi every year. It's the grape leaves, the stuffed grape leaves with rice. Some people call it dolma, some people call it sarma. But we, the specific one with just rice and onions and stuff, we call yalanchi.
Sounds delicious. Was there anything else you were thinking of?
I can't really think of anything else.
That's okay. I'm curious what school was like for you growing up, and if you saw a lot of other Armenian students in your younger education.
Well, I guess when I was really young, I kind of like, I think it was as a result of going to an Armenian church pretty frequently that like I kind of was proud of my Armenian identity, and like that would be kind of something that would slip into conversation even when I was young. But there were very few Armenians in the schools that I went to. I remember in elementary school, maybe like 2 or 3, maybe 4, and then me, and then middle school, which I went to Computech. There was a couple there too. It was like the same ones from elementary school. In high school, we had an Armenian club. There were like 50 members, but maybe like 3 of them were Armenian.
So only 3 out of the 50 members were actually Armenian?
Yeah.
Were you a part of that club?
Yeah. I helped start it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. And what was that like for you?
I mean, it wasn't really, it was more like where students got together and just like hung out. But my mom made hummus every week for that.
That's great. So I was also curious if you could describe what your neighborhood growing up was like and what the important places there were for you. Well,
this place, because I live right down the street pretty much. I remember coming here pretty frequently when I was really young. Other than that, I guess, the High Market, which is down the street that way. We got a lot of Armenian stuff, like Armenian spices, like things like sumac and what else? Za'atar, and what else would we get? I don't know, stuff like that, stuff relating to that that you can't really get in a regular grocery store. But yeah, other than that, I can't really think of anything because I don't think there's too many things like that around here that I went to very frequently.
Is there an area in Fresno where most of the Armenians live?
There used to be a little Armenia over by Holy Trinity, but that's no more. And I would say they're pretty scattered throughout Fresno. That's how it seems to me.
Could you tell me any details about Little Armenia that you know?
I just know there was a fire there recently. All the houses are boarded up, and there's like street signs that say Armenia and have the forget-me-not flower. I'm not entirely sure like about who lived there or how many people lived there at a time. But yeah, I think all the houses are like condemned or something.
When was that fire?
It was recently, maybe a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, or last year.
So I know you mentioned the church. I was wondering if you knew about any other Armenian institutions in the area?
Armenian institutions. Yeah, there's ASO, the Fresno State Armenian Students Organization, of which I'm a part.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that I think that's a very effective way to get young Armenians together, because so many take so many different majors, and so they would not really be exposed to those other Armenians because of the difference in fields of study. And so the ASO definitely helps to bring those people together.
Yeah, I would love to talk about Fresno State and ASO in a moment. I was curious about your experience learning Armenian, because you said you're learning the language right now. What have been some challenges you've had learning Armenian or other languages, and how has it been difficult to preserve that?
Well, fortunately, Fresno State offers Western Armenian 1A and 1B. So that was a good starting point, like learning the alphabet and learning basic rules, grammar rules and stuff, and word order and stuff like that. But other than that, it's pretty much, you know, attempting to consume as much of the language as I can. But unfortunately, Western Armenian is kind of dying, and Eastern Armenian is the predominant dialect, and so it's much easier to find people that speak Eastern Armenian than it is to find them speaking Western Armenian. So that kind of adds a layer of difficulty, because, like, you know, in my heart, I want to learn Western Armenian, but it's kind of more utilitarian to learn Eastern Armenian.
Have you inspired any of your siblings or your mom, who doesn't speak Western Armenian, to start learning?
No, they were never really that kind of that type.
That's all good. I was wondering if you could tell more about your experience at Fresno State and getting involved in Armenian studies there.
Yeah, well, I was always, so both of my sisters went to Fresno State, and they both had minored in Armenian studies, and so I minored in Armenian studies, and those classes that I took for the minor, for me, were the most interesting, just because they were the most relevant to me, and maybe not relevant to, you know, my major, but most relevant to me as a person, and like my history in this world. Learning about from ancient history to more modern history, to literature from Western and Eastern Armenians, and then of course to the language. Yeah, it was very interesting.
Do you have a favorite class that you took there?
Probably the language, or maybe 105B. I think was the modern history class that I took. That was really interesting.
And did you have a favorite professor or any staff there that were?
Yeah, Professor Barlow. Yeah, I've known him like for all my life, because he's always gone to St. Paul. But you know, getting to know him as a professor, and having to deal with him in that context, or maybe I shouldn't say deal with him, but like interact with him in that context. You know, he's so knowledgeable about Armenian stuff that it's kind of inspiring, you know, to learn about that kind of thing.
Yeah. Was there a larger population of Armenian students at Fresno State than your previous schools?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of like the sample size went way bigger, you know, so there's way more students at Fresno State, and you know, everyone goes to Fresno State and Fresno pretty much. And so it's kind of just bound. There's bound to be more Armenians in Fresno State that compared to like in high school and elementary school.
And do you have a favorite memory with the Armenian Studies program?
With the Armenian Studies program, oh yeah, I went to Armenia with the Armenian Studies program.
Oh, tell me about that.
So that was my first time in Armenia in 2023. Professor Barlow took a group of 12 students to Armenia, and we toured the country. We went to places like, all the places that we had learned about in classes. We went to Garni, we went to Noravank, we went to Gehart, we went to where else did we learn about? Yeah, we went to Echmiadzin, Gayane, Hripsime, we went to Khorvirap. Yeah, we went everywhere. We went to places that we didn't learn about, but are just kind of notable places in Armenia. We went to Adeni Cave, Adeni 1, where they found the oldest pair of shoes. And we went to Jermuk to see the waterfall. Yeah, it was a really fun trip, and it really inspired me to just want to go to Armenia. Because I guess it's kind of off topic, but it's in a similar vein. My dad never really had a desire to go to Armenia, just because he didn't feel a connection to it, because he saw himself as a Western Armenian, and seeing that kind of thing is, I guess, wholly different from an Eastern Armenian, made him not really have a desire to go to Armenia. But after going to Armenia for me, and my mom was the first group that Professor Barlow took to Armenia in 1988, I think, when it was Soviet still. But having that opportunity to go, I really just want to go back after I learned the language fully.
Wow.
My dad was the one that kind of got me onto Armenian music and stuff like that. But I think it was just like, he was an only child, and he kind of felt this pressure to assimilate, and it was a significant pressure. And having both two immigrant parents, I guess something like being Armenian, or valuing that Armenianness and connection to whatever motherland we might have, that kind of had less importance to him.
So I also want to talk about Fresno ASO. I was interested how you got involved with that initially.
Well, similar with ACYO and Armenian Studies, both my sisters were in ASO. And so the people that were in ASO when my middle sister graduated, were people that I ended up being friends with, because either they went to St. Paul or my sister would take me to these kinds of things, these ASO events. And so I already had these pre-existing relationships when I got to Fresno State. And so that just made it really easy to be active in ASO and go to the events and, hang out with the people.
What do you see as any similarities or differences between the Fresno State ASO and the Armenian club of your high school?
That we actually have Armenians in it, and that there are events, and the Armenian club was kind of just like we hung out once a week in this room and ate my mom's hummus. But the ASO is something that does much more, in that like events are planned and merchandise is made.
What are some of the events you guys put on?
We did an Armenian genocide commemoration. Predominantly it's been like social gatherings for ASO. In previous years there's been things like banquets, a winter banquet, end of the semester banquet / 50th anniversary, because it was the 50th anniversary of ASO. But yeah, primarily social stuff.
What does being part of the leadership of ASO mean?
That's a good question. It means that I have a responsibility to my fellow Armenian students that to facilitate this coming together, this togetherness, this fellowship, I guess, and help Armenians come together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, facilitate that.
Could you tell me more about what being a part of this organization has meant to you?
It's helped me meet a lot more Armenians that I otherwise wouldn't have met. That go to Fresno State. It's helped me in the planning of events and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And being the treasurer, managing money.
Yeah. Did you just graduate from Fresno State?
No, I
what
graduate.
grade are you?
I graduate next year.
Graduate next year.
Because I switched my major.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you have then any plans for the future of the organization.
No, not really. None for me. Although we do have an ongoing campaign called Generation Justice to bring awareness to the Armenian genocide. Yeah.
Could you talk more about that campaign?
Let's see. So the primary idea of Generation Justice is to, so when you look at the Fresno Armenian community, you see quite a bit of political divide between Armenians. But when you kind of strip it down, you realize that they all pretty much want the same thing, unless it's something specific to like their village or whatever. And it's like recognition, and it's like of their voice to be heard. But there's so much politics that ends up keeping these Armenians together, these Armenians apart. And so the idea behind Generation Justice is to have a kind of movement that transcends these political boundaries, these superficial boundaries that limit us as a nation.
Why do you think that political divide is there?
I kind of think it's just how Armenians are. There's a saying, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. That's just how Armenians tend to be when you look at things like throughout history, and Armenians tend to be stubborn and just hard to lead, and it's hard for them to listen, hard for us, I guess, to listen to each other when we're set in some way.
Going off of that, what do you wish for the Armenian community of Fresno in the future?
I wish that it grows, and it has the goal, or I guess that it continues to preserve the Armenianness that the varying Armenians of the diaspora have brought together. Because often a lot of Armenians tend to, more Armenians and more Armenians keep tending towards assimilation. Because it's the easier route. It's easier to act like everyone else and not preserve this, essentially irrelevant way of life or culture. It's what's the point in doing that? But I hope that the importance of preserving that is realized by the Armenian community in Fresno.
How do you preserve being Armenian?
That's a good question, because you have to first establish what it means to be Armenian, and that's a difficult thing to answer too. Of course, I would say that the language is a part of it, a significant part of it. And when you think of significant aspects of culture throughout any culture, you have like music, food, language, and of course a state, like a homeland. That's something that they all have in common that give them a common culture. It's the preservation of the language, of the music, of the dance, of all of those aspects of culture that make us different from Georgians, because Armenia is so close to Georgia. What exactly differentiates us from them? Or Armenians coexisted with Greeks and Assyrians and Kurds and Turks even in Western Armenia. So what exactly differentiates the Armenians from those other ethnic groups? And so it's those aspects that differentiate us that need to be preserved and that's what I think is important for the Armenian community.
Mm-hmm. If the Armenian community of Fresno was lost, what would you say would be lost to the greater Armenian diaspora or the world?
A lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's like this is like Fresno's where William Saroyan was from. Fresno's where the biggest Armenian studies program in the United States is based in. Fresno's where so many Armenian things are that losing that Armenianness of Fresno is kind of just a net negative for the Armenian diaspora community, because not only do you lose so many people, but you lose so many like key figures in the diaspora, and key just places, like the Armenian cemetery. It's the only Ararat Armenian cemetery is the only officially Armenian cemetery in the U.S. And so if you lose, the diaspora that feeds that, I guess, then it's just a cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I was wondering if you could speak some words about what being Armenian means to you.
Well, I think being Armenian to me is, when you look throughout our history, it's a history that is full of many different things. It's full of pain and suffering, but it's also full of perseverance through that pain and the triumph over that pain even. And of course, I'd be remiss to mention that it's not only pain and suffering that has occurred in Armenian history that has been triumphed over, because Armenia at one point had a pretty large empire, which eventually fell, like all empires tend to do. But this is a history that we have that dates back thousands of years, and I think when you look at it, you can really just boil it down to fighting for what is right, or what you see as right. So what is right? So I'm Armenian. So what is right? And stubbornly refusing what you see as wrong.